So I call this the Adept aesthetic with the ascetic attitude. The adept aesthetic with the ascetic attitude like to alleviate the adverse within ambience of a chord. The authenticity of his argument would ameliorate the angst with an astute, altruistic, articulate alternative. This ace arbiter at the apex of his aplomb was an abdicable ability, agility, eclecticism, admiration, affirmation, adjuration, adoration, accreditation, assimilation, and advantages for all. Beckoning both mount to benevolent men, the fact there was be devil, be guiled, I'm amused by the body, and I'm losing back to master from body. The blue was all the way with the bears and the blues, the boys were getting bigger and better, and all there was a bonus, a boost, a pussy for business, no barriers, no borders, no boys, no business. Back to the basics, expanding with the banks without condoning or condemning or condescending into confrontation, consternation, confusion, collusion, or contempt. No chronic, crude, cringing chagrin, or a cacophony of cataclysmic convulsions. They considered Connemara as a conduit of creativity for some conscientious, caring, competent contemplativeness, where it would connect in a cascading cadence of confluence that had credibility at its core. They should view the prism of detail as he deigned to deride the derivative dexterity of the didactic dialectic, whose diffident dialogue was deteriorating into a detached, desolate, destitute diatribe, directed at those dedicated diehards, detoxing from debilitating dipsomania, and driven by desire and the best of all delusions, they dipped down into depths of delight and danced until dawn. Eclectic existentials was ecstatic and exhilarated by the exuberance of the enigmatic egalitarian, who liked to energize every exciting enterprise existing between the extraneous and the extrinsic. He evolved an ethos of exemplary expectation where he would elucidate and encapsulate an expediency, an empiricist exuding an ethereal exterior, encouraging others to end at enmity. He never fabricated any facet of his faculties. He was a fallible phantasma, a formidable faculty for fusion of fundamentalists with a fundamental fixation for the permanent, whose fervour fulfilled the pursuits, the spree fall, which in turn forced the frenzy of frantic fundiosity till he finally found physical rectitude with a financial advisor who fondly fibula fashioned these focuses till they famously flew off into the future. He could be generous and gregarious, gloriously full of good grace, for a gift of the gilded with gravitas and agility, with never genuflect the gentry, or try and second guess the growth of growing in the well-grounded garment. He was a genuine genius, a genial gouger who had no gripe with grooving, but would rather groove than grovel. Those who glow got his goat. He was a global gladiator, groomed, gleaming and glistening. The harangued and harassed, harried and hassled, he would hurtle headlong into herbaceous homeland of heartfelt honesty and the hope of heroism, the host and the healthy haven of the healing harbour. His hefty hubris was never on hiatus, but a hype and hysteria never hit home, because honour, humility was his only homily in the high hinterland of hope. He would hail the hospitality of the holy, and he would hitchhike through history on the highway of hope. Instinctively, he knew that the idealists were the idiosyncrasies of an iconoclast who would illuminate the illiterate, illegal, illicit illusion of the indisputable incompetent, whose inflexibility was infuriating and insulting. The idealist could be ineffable, indefatigable, incorrigible, incorruptible, indestructible, but never ignorable. He could identify with the indolent, the insecure, the indisposed. Intrinsically, he was imagination, imbued with impetus. Jock was jocular, John was your con, Joe was your coast, but Jake had the jokes. Justin was judicious, jovial and joyful, and the jolly Jakey jargon was just the joke of the jill, the jeweler. The jingle jangle in his shaded jeans made him jump and jive, jiggle and juggle, jostle his joints like a japing jester at a jazz jamboree in Jakarta. His hair was kempt, but his kind of kiss was akin to Kisudos to a kinetic kangaroo. He liked to keep his karma at the kernel of his knowledge, so he didn't knock the kerfuffle in the kibbutz. He put the kibosh on the kamikaze Kiwi, who was kowtowing with the kilt-wearing keeper of the keys, who had a knack of kneeling on his knapsack till his kebab went kaput in his kimono, and it all kicked off. From the labyrinth, the luminaries latched on to the lack of lassitude and the latitudinarian. His lifelong liberalism and lateral levity were laudable in a land lumbered with latent lament. He would laugh at those lurking, leering loop points of lust, lounging and loitering in the lap of luxury, as he listed the lessons he'd learned from those legends of liberty, the lilting lovers of life. From the mystical magnificence of the majestic morning, the magnetic maestro with the metaphysical maxim mesmerised the masses with magic, muse and mystery, then monopolised the merchants of miasma. He would meditate on the mawkish, the maudlin, the mundane, the morose, the moribund, the myriad meanings of mercy for the maligned and the marginalised, manna for the multitude, and minuscule minimalism. Like a nimbus and octomulant walk nonchalantly across the nebulous night, giving the impression of nyctalopia, without nihilism or narcissism, and nurtured by nutrients, he nailed his numinous nose to the nuance of his narrative. Neither nervous or nauseous, negative or neurotic, he needed to be near the nub of the nocturnal. Nomadic notions of natives in nature nudged them neatly towards the nucleus of normality. The optics for the Oriental Olympian osteopath were ordained by the oracle and observed by the octogenarian outsider with the optimistic outlook that would overcome any obstacle oscillating in his orbit. His occupation meant he was easily offended, but he was never odious, overt, odd, or offhand. But he would obliterate the opposition or opinionated, orientated outrage, then orchestrate the obvious outcome. He could palaver with the petty, the peons, the pariahs, the paltry, the poor and the powerful. He would promulgate and prognosticate to the proficient and profound and proclaim the patriotic proclamation. He had a perspicacious perspective pertaining to philosophy and phlebotomy, and was pertinacious and perspicacious with personal property. His personal persuasions of principle and pluralism propelled a pulsating pacifist along the paths of peace. He had the quaint quality of quips that helped in his quest for contestants, but he had no qualms about making his quarry quake. He would quibble and quarrel with those querulous quidnuncs in the quaking quagmire of quangos. He would question the quid pro quo with Qatar and the quantity of those on the quantaphonic quest. Then taking the quantum leap to the front of the queue, he would quizzically quote from Quixote. The radical raiders of the Renaissance were raised with a rod of reason rasped regularly against their rear. They were resilient, reliable, resourceful, resolute, rapid response to restoration and renovation. They recognised the recipients of restitution and retribution and regarded restlessness as the road to redemption. Raucous and raunchy, they revelled in ruse and riddle and reaped the rewards of reciting the rosary. The swinging 60 showmans with their slinky silver satin suits with scintillating, syncopating and salubrious self-confidence, skillful set of show-stopping standards, sweat-soaked swiveling, sensational sax solos. There was no shame in severely shaking the source of your sensible, sensuous, subliminal subtleties. We were stalwarts with stamina, succinct and supreme. These were the 60s, and stars were shining. The tasteful tenderness of the talented talisman was thought-provoking, therapeutic, full of true tolerance and touching tranquility, so transparent that it transcended into a treasure trove of trust. Transversing the turgid, turbulent turmoil of twilight twisting, tweaking, twang-wang, tongue-kind tempos, tangible translations, thoughts of tracks and trains of triumphs. The unassuming, urbane utilitarianist was ubiquitous in his unction for the underprivileged. He was unequivocal in his urge to unite the unique and the unsung in the upper echelons of unheard of utopia. Uplifting the urchins of the underclass was the ultimate understatement in unison and unity, but he utilised the universal underground to do his utmost to undo the unequal. Vis-a-vis the VIPs, there will be no vile vindictiveness, no vitriolic verbiage, no vituperation, no vacillation. We are all full of vim, verve, vigour and vitality. Though we may be victims of vicissitude, we are vibrant virtuosos, virile vigilantes, visionaries for the voiceless, validated, vindicated, viable and vocal, verified in the vernacular. Words of wisdom would never wilt, not even in the wishy-washy watered-down wasteland of waffle. The swarthy earth of words would never wind up. The winsome, the windswept, the worthwhile. He would welcome the wretched, the wicked, the warlike into a way of well-being, well-meaning, well-spoken, where he would wipe and wash away the woes of the world as they waded and wallowed in the wonders of a wounded world. X marks the spot where the X-rays of the xenophobic xylophone player were Xerox, Nezana and Dewey Xavier. He yodeled his way from the YMCA to the yard with the out full of yeast and yan. He yanked his white fronts under the U3 Yellicky and called it yoga. He yearned for youthfulness, yaks and yam and yummy yellow yogurt. The yesterdays of yore when you and I were young yelling yippee-yi-yi, bro. You who? Sig and Zag and Zanies, Hesper, Zeppelins, Appenzeezy and Zits and Zombies and Zippers and Zebras and Zebras and all in the zone of the zoological. They go singing the Zit and Zoom and the Zephyrs. They knew a Zulu who wanted a Sig mind in Zimbabwe when Zero the Zenith with the seal of the Zealot and the Zitgeist of Zosimus. The adept aesthetic with the ascetic attitude like to alleviate the adverse within an ambience of a car. Some people like to twist themselves to suit the truth. Some people like to twist the truth to suit themselves. Some people do the twist because they can't do the locomotion. That's a train of thought. I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think I am. I think I am. Am I? I think. Am I? I think. Am I? I think, therefore I am. I am, therefore I think I am. I think I am. Am I? Am I? I think.